If imitation is indeed the sincerest form of flattery, then one car company should be blushing. That's this week on Motoring 2002.
TSN's Motoring 2002 is brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oils, formulated for the vehicles you drive and the way you drive them. And Midas. Keep a good thing going. Go Midas.
You know, there actually was a day when you had 4 choices when buying a vehicle: coupe, sedan, station wagon, and pickup truck. And of course, we've got now minivans and sport utilities of all shapes and sizes. And the latest hot segment is one called crossover vehicles. Well, this week, we're going to meet the newest member to this segment. Well, really, it's not new. In fact, this company invented the crossover segment long before it was considered cool. Now, this company is Subaru, and we're going to head to the Talladega Speedway here in Alabama, which seems like an odd place for Subaru to introduce their second-generation Forester. But then again, maybe it isn't.
When I first started with Subaru back in 1988, I remember talking to a lot of people about all-wheel drive, the advantages of all-wheel drive, and then they'd be like, why? You know, everybody was doing front-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive, and if it's so good, why isn't everybody else doing it? Well, of course, now everybody else is doing it.
Although it is a sport utility vehicle, it does handle and perform like a performance car. And that's why we brought people out here to Talladega to actually prove to everyone that it actually does deliver true driving performance. And that comes from the low center of gravity and the all-wheel driving system that the Subarus have.
The Forester is built on an Impreza platform, so already it's itching to go. It's a very stiff platform. It's 29% stiffer than the older Subaru, and very, very good handling vehicle. So it's going to be like the sports car of SUVs. So you can go off-roading if you want to. You've got the ground clearance, 190 millimeters, and you've got the road holding capability of a sports car.
A very odd place to be testing a Subaru. We were up on at the top of the banking with the right wheels up against the wall at about 100 miles an hour, and I'm sort of looking out to my left thinking, what must it be like to have Jeff Gordon out there? You know, it's a neat experience and an unusual one in that type of vehicle.
There certainly are a lot of new entrants into these segments and offering all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, 4x4 variants. However, we are distinguishing our system as a full-time all-wheel drive system that delivers power all the time to all the wheels and acts proactively, providing traction control under all road conditions for all vehicles in our lineup.
Hi, I'm Jim. This is a car, and this is Subaru Lack of Pretense Days. And what we'd like to do is sell you a good car at a reasonable price. This Loyale wagon has all-wheel drive, AC, a nice AM/FM stereo, steering wheel, all for about $1,000 less than one of its closest competitors, Toyota Corolla. I didn't want to say it, but then now I feel bad. Come test drive a Subaru today, won't you? Then I'll feel better.
Subaru, you know, going back to the early days, if you like, at least in my recollection, we're sort of pioneers, and obviously pioneers in the four-wheel drive in those days. They didn't even call it all-wheel drive, and they pioneered that, and also in inexpensive cars. You know, the cars that everybody could afford. It wasn't an exotic thing for Subaru.
Subaru has definitely been a trendsetter in this type of system. They never really showed their strength until they came out with the Outback, and then they started using Paul Hogan as a pitch person to showcase their product. And I think from then, the sales just went up and up and up.
Just another day in the outback.
We've been doing it for quite a while, and the reason we're doing it really is not for off-roading, and that's what people equate all-wheel drive with. We're doing all-wheel drive mainly for the safety aspect of it, the driving and the secure feeling that you have when you've got a vehicle grasping with all four wheels, and not vehicle is not affected so much by puddles of water and rain and snow and all the rest of that sort of stuff.
The only disappointment, if it could be said about the car, is that I think they could have stretched the styling a little bit. It's quite a traditional looking, SUV look. But other than that, it's a great improvement on the current vehicle. This one, just as they have indicated to us, was their goal, has just improved raised the level, raised the bar.
It's nice to be a little bit of a trendsetter. A little while ago, it'd be like Subaru, and now it's like everybody knows about the Subaru, especially the Outback. The Outback and the Forester, I mean, we're going down that way, and then we've also got the GT and the Impreza WRX for more sporty side of things. Everything, of course, with all-wheel drive, so it's kind of nice.
If it looks like a duck, it waddles like a duck, and it quacks like a duck. More later on Kenzies Corner.
One of the things I do like about this CTS is this little digital recorder, as it allows you to leave yourself little memos.
Memo to self, ask Brad for a pay raise.
And that's where I'm going to go right now. Recognizing that Cadillac needed to spruce up its image desperately, it's launched this all-new CTS. Now this is a car that definitely falls into the love it or hate it category. Riding on double wishbones up front and a modified multi-link design in back, the CTS brings a great balance between comfort and handling. On the highway, the cushioned ride helps the miles melt away, leaving the occupants all but oblivious to the rigors of a rough road. Switch gears and head for the hinterland for a serious thrash, and the response to driver input is fast and predictable, as was very evident through the pylons. Understeer and oversteer stay away, and body roll is next to non-existent. The speed-sensitive steering helps enormously, bringing a crisp on-centre feel and fast turn-ins. It's a design that has few vices. Indeed, it's a dynamic package worthy of wearing any good European brand's emblem. One of the reasons that this CTS was so accomplished through the pylons is down to the fact that the sport model comes with StabiliTrak. Now that's Cadillac's electronic dynamic stability control program. It monitors driver input and compares it to the car's reactions. If the two are not on the same page, it reduces engine output and can brake the wheels to bring the whole lot back into line. Believe me, this system is one of the best on the market. Where the CTS trips over its shoelaces somewhat is in the power department. A couple of years ago, the 220 horses and 218 pounds-feet of torque the 3.2-litre 6 pushes to the rear wheels would have been considered okay. Today it's about 40 ponies shy of a corral. In fairness, the motor does have a sense of urgency if you'd really wind it up, but it's just not as crisp and athletic as the market now demands, especially considering the 3,600 pounds of leather-lined luxury it must motivate. Simply stated, the CTS desperately needs a derivative of Cadillac's Northstar V8 engine to compete, and yes, there is enough room under the hood. The angular approach outside is carried on inside here, where you'll find some pronounced creases on the door panels, but it carries itself off quite nicely, primarily because all the materials have a quality feel and they're nice and soft touch as well. The other thing you get, great lateral support from the seats and a wonderful radio that pumps out superior sound. However, where it falls apart, whilst this automatic transmission has got 5 gears, a sport mode, a winter mode, it lacks a manual mode, and considering the competition, well, that's an oversight they need to address. The automatic transmission also suffers somewhat because of the selected gear ratios. First, second and third are nicely strung together, keeping the engine on the boil. Then you get to fourth and a jump that drops the engine out of the power band. The result is that the box has a tendency to hunt between third and fourth, seemingly searching for the right gear. Stopping power comes from a large set of disc brakes and a good anti-lock system. The design is powerful, hauling the heavy Caddy to rest in just 107 feet from 80k. The pedal feel is sharp thanks to high-performance brake pads, and the ABS stays out until needed.
You know, when you look at the CTS, it becomes blatantly obvious that form took precedence over function, and nowhere is it better demonstrated than back here. First of all, the deck lid, because of the way it's hinged, is abnormally heavy, the opening very small, and you've got to carry one of these, a snow brush, and all year round. Why, you ask yourself? Because you'll need it to reach anything that goes up against the back seat.
Elsewhere, the CTS is a true Cadillac in that it comes loaded, featuring power everything and heated seats, as well as dual-zone climate controls. Redundant controls for them and the radio sit on the steering wheel, as do the cruise functions, which allows the driver to keep both hands on the wheel. Safety-wise, the CTS ranks with anything offered. As well as a full complement of airbags, including side curtains, you get GM's terrific OnStar service, xenon headlights, as well as active elements like StabiliTrak, anti-lock brakes and traction control.
This Cadillac CTS is very much a hit and miss affair. On the one hand, it's got wonderful driving dynamics. On the other, well, a straw poll conducted at my favourite watering hole speaks volumes. Of the 15 people I talked to aged between 25 and 65, those who loved it, well, they'll never spend more than $35,000 on a car in their life. The remainder, who routinely spend more than $50,000 on cars, well, they just plain weren't interested.
Our Midas tip of the week concerns emergency brakes. You know that expression, use it or lose it? You can really apply it to the cables and mechanism that comprise your emergency. If you use it on a regular basis, it'll work properly for a long period of time and release when you want it to release. A lot of motorists tell me, though, that they're in the habit of never using it, and they're going to lose it because the cables and mechanism involved with that system will corrode, and the one time that it inadvertently gets applied, maybe not by them, but maybe by service personnel or another driver in the vehicle, it may completely hang up or only partially release. If it completely hangs up, you won't move the vehicle at all. But worse still, if it only partially releases after being applied, it may drag the rear brakes, causing them to overheat and wear out prematurely. That's your worst case scenario. One thing that we find is that if we periodically pop these boots off that protect them, clean the cable with a rag, and then spray a little bit of rust check down the end of the cable, it'll penetrate it and lubricate it. Then you can pop the boot back on and you're done. Another thing that's very important is that you apply the emergency brake solidly so it holds the vehicle, and then after you release it, make sure that the vehicle wants to roll freely on a gradient. That's your Midas tip of the week.
America is asking you to call. Drive your Chevrolet through the USA. America's the greatest land of all.
It's called Bel Air. And as many people know, the Bel Air is a very special vehicle in Chevrolet's heritage.
The other day I met an old friend. Now, Charlie, that's my friend's name. He usually never talks much about cars, but ever since he drove my new Chevrolet, oh boy, Charlie talks just like one of our own engineers. New Turbofire V8's terrific. Can't beat that glide ride front suspension.
We wanted to develop a vehicle that was based on them, not any one of those years, but based on that whole Tri-5 period, and do it in a very contemporary way. So you'll see a lot of design cues, the overall shape of the vehicle, and a lot of details all the way around the vehicle that are based on the Tri-5 Chevys, but done in a very fresh way. There are details that at first glance may look like a very simple speaker grille that might have been in a late 50s or early 60s Chevy, but is actually a CD player for the rear seat occupants. Or a gauge cluster that looks very much like a 56 Chevy, but it's got all the technology and all the information that you want in a very modern vehicle.
What does the 1956 Chevrolet look like? That's the best kept secret of the year. And as the 56 Chevrolet begins the journey to your dealer, it's security all the way, under canvas covers, and behind sealed boxcar doors.
The Bel Air name is something very special to a lot of people, and you know, you can really see the passion that not only the design team, but the team in our shops that were building the car, putting it together head for the vehicle, some of which own 55 Chevys and 56 and 57 Chevys, and they feel as though we've done the right thing with this design.
And sing your
It's time to bid our long-term Trailblazer a somewhat fond farewell. Quality has been an issue with some of the domestic manufacturers, however it's also something that has been greatly improved over the years. This aspect is readily seen in the Trailblazer. On the one hand, the engine, transmission and suspension are exemplary. On the other, allowing a vehicle off the lot without its all-wheel drive system being hooked up, well, it's very disappointing. The other thing that disappoints is the design of the rotary knob that allows the driver to switch between the different modes. With the Trailblazer, it's all too easy to go one notch too far and into four-wheel drive high. The problem is that there's no light to warn the driver of the error. Driven on a dry road in 4 high will eventually damage the drivetrain. Quibbles aside, the Trailblazer provided great service, with all drivers reaching for its keys whenever a long drive was the order of the day.
You know, despite the convenience of automatic transmissions, there are many people who still enjoy a manual but dread this situation that I'm in right now. I'm on a hill, usually you're in traffic, you're dreading the fact that as soon as you take your foot off the brake to engage the clutch and move off, you're going to roll back and hit the guy behind you. Well, Subaru has brought back the hill holder. Now, how that works is I can be in this spot with my foot on the brake, and now I can take my foot off the brake, and the hill holder holds me on the hill. When the light turns green, it's simply a matter of releasing the clutch, putting a little acceleration into it, and away you go, stress-free. How about that? All right, let's head to the Quaker State Garage and join Bill Gardner.
Brad, the hill holder's a great feature, and you know Subaru had it many years ago. I've got a lot of customers with Subarus, old ones. The hill holder feature still works fine with no maintenance. The body might have fallen off those cars from rust, but that feature still works. But you know, you don't need to feel bad or ashamed of yourself if you've ever had that tense situation where you're on a steep incline and the car wants to roll back sharply. Somebody pulls up close to you on the rear bumper, and you know, you're worried about either stalling it, burning the clutch, or not being able to launch the car properly because you're worried about rolling backwards into that other car. Here's what you do. Most standard transmission cars, if they're worth their salt, have got the emergency brake on the drive tunnel immediately beside or behind the shifter. And if your car's configured in that fashion, you're all set if you know what to do. What you do is after you pull up to a dead stop on that grade and you've got the car held on the brakes, pull the emergency brake on sharply so that it can't roll back. Now that frees up your right foot, which was on the brake pedal, to cover the throttle. The problem being that you're trying to cover 3 pedals, the clutch, brake, and throttle pedal, with only 2 feet. So you can take your right foot off the brake and cover the throttle now. When you see your opportunity in traffic, you can bring up the revs a little bit, start to feed the clutch until you feel it bite, and simultaneously release the emergency, and away you go. And once you've practiced it for a while, it'll come like second nature, and you'll get a lot more enjoyment out of driving a standard car, particularly in hilly areas. You'll never have a problem again. Now, earlier on the show, I showed you how to maintain the emergency brake cables and mechanism so that they'll be free and work properly when you need them. And this is an example, perfect example, of how you can really use it to your advantage. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 2002.
For more information on past and future episodes of Motoring, log on to the Motoring website at motoringtv.com, where you can email your suggestions, questions, and comments, which are always welcome. That's motoringtv.com.
Back in my misspent youth, I had an old Volvo. It was a great old car. It was, matter of fact, not totally unlike this one. It was 4 doors. It had room for 5 people. It had a roof rack. It had a squared off back like this with a tailgate. You know what we called that Volvo? It was a station wagon. You know what Subaru is trying to call this? A sport utility vehicle. This is not a sport utility vehicle. It doesn't have 1,000 pounds of useless frame. It doesn't have a truck suspension. It doesn't have a truck engine. It's actually sporty and it's actually useful, so of course it can't be an SUV because they're neither. So why do they insist on calling this an SUV? Because the marketing weenies hate that term almost as much as they hate the term hatchback. Now why do they hate the term station wagon? Well, it's not because of you viewers, because you're smarter than that, but a lot of people out there kind of associate the term station wagon with something their granddad drove, you know, with the MacTac wood grain on the side, driving around with a big hat on. Well, you know what I used my station wagon for? Towing race cars. I think that's fairly cool. So what's wrong with calling something a station wagon? This thing is handsome. It does have 4-wheel drive. It's got big wheels and tires. And yes, this proves that you can drive it in the mud, but that doesn't make it a sport utility vehicle. You're a station wagon, my son. Be proud of it. I'm Jim Kenzie.
A few final thoughts on the 2003 Forester. Personally, I don't think it's going to win any beauty contests, and hopefully Subaru will continue to improve the styling. But as we've seen this week, this vehicle is comfortable in the mud and even more impressive on the speedway. And maybe that's why Subaru likes to call this a sport utility, but emphasize its sporty character. Anyway, Graham, of course, will have a closer look on a future test drive. Make sure you join us for that as we continue to bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
Ice-carving for me started as a hobby, literally, and it's just exploded since then. And it seems to have captured everybody's imagination. We've had a lot of press on it.
TSN's Motoring 2002 has been brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oils, formulated for the vehicles you drive and the way you drive them. And Midas. Keep a good thing going. Go Midas.